growing my own seed, there's quite a few plants that I'd buy seed, I'd plant it. There's no way in hell I'm getting a saleable product out of it. It gets worms and diseases and all kinds of things, and saves the seed from the most successful ones and plant them, and never a problem. I just have, from my own seed, I get beautiful plants. I planted beans, like pinto beans and red beans, in my corn in Australia, and there's some fly that lays its egg in the bean stem right just above the surface of the soil, and it decimated my beans. I saved the seed off of the most successful plants. Never had that problem in the, you know. Growing my own seed was like, it was so many things, many things. It made all the difference in the world.
Well, Dan Kitteridge talks about the fact that if you're buying seed, you're getting the #2 seed. The big farms get the #1 seed. You know?
Sure, that's their foundation seed.
Yeah.
Yep.
So is that? Did you got that cup? You got enough of it in there?
Yeah, here, I kind of put it in there. Okay.
Is that enough, or you want more?
Oh, that's plenty.
You sure?
They're pretty small.
Well,
We can get you more.
yeah, until I grow more. This is enough to grow a garden, and then I'll get my own seed.
This is Ventura, I'm pretty sure, isn't it, Rocco? Do you remember?
This is Ventura.
Yeah, Ventura to me is the best. It's my favorite. It's open pollinated, and it's just high quality. I really love it.
And smell that seed.
Yeah.
And this,
It's a seasoning by itself.
start
It
this
really
now,
is.
put it in a
Salty.
greenhouse sometime in the middle of September, and you will just have, by Thanksgiving, you'll have celery. Literally, when I give, you know how people to eat a stick of celery, it takes them a while?
Yeah.
You give them a stick that's been grown in a greenhouse, and you turn around and answer somebody a question, you look back and it's gone, they're asking for another one. It's just like juicy, not as fibrous, sweet. It's just incredible.
I've grown my own celery, and what a difference. I mean, if you were to look under a microscope, you would see the cell structure is much, like the cells are smaller and stronger, and the integrity is a lot more. Growing them with nitrogen fertilizer, then it's just like blowing them up. You've got big, large, watery cells that are weak and that you just crush, and it's just, there's nothing that whole thing is just crazy. Why are we growing things that aren't fit to eat?
My favorite story on that, I used to have a bakery next to a produce company, and I was also selling to them, and I sold them lettuce. I used to sell them these mixed colors, you know, all different kinds of lettuce. They loved it. And one time, he came and said, Pat, you know, we lost a box of your lettuce, and I just found it now. It's 3 weeks old. You know what? It looks better than the stuff we're buying from California. And I said, that's because it's not all water. You know?
That's right.
That's because there's minerals in there. You know? Okay, so let's take a look at some other things that are going on.
Yeah.
Here. So this is the greenhouse that I said really took off for us. We made the soil, you know, and then I made a really big mistake. I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, but we had some disease issues, and I've been reading about trichoderma, and I treated everything with trichoderma. And when Meredith looking under the microscope, our fungi just collapsed because the trichoderma not only ate the bad guys, but ate the good guys.
Yeah, it's pretty aggressive, isn't it?
Yeah. So now we got to come back and get it more fungal. So what would you recommend for sprays for bringing the fungi up?
I would recommend humic acid.
Humic acid. Okay.
It's really a fungal food.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, aloe vera juice is.
Okay.
So I've got some of the Barbados strain of aloe vera, and it makes big leaves, you know, this long. They'll get this wide at the base and that kind of thing, about this thick.
We'll stick a few in here.
You'll have to winter it over in your greenhouses,
Yeah, we can do that.
but you can do that.
Yeah.
And it, when it makes pups, it's prolific. So you'll get a lot of new sets.
Okay.
And I reckon that it's one of the plants that we really need to grow for our use as growers.
Sure.
Because if you want to brew a fungal compost tea, then it's a good material to feed the fungi in your compost tea.
So, like, what kind of quantity do a tea? Like a
Well,
gallon
you're
or
talking
something?
about a gallon in a cube,
Yeah,
basically.
okay. All right, cool. Okay. We can do that.
And not only that, but there's other qualities to it. It's like an animal repellent.
Mm-hmm.
Rabbits and deer don't like it.
Uh-huh.
And
Well, that's a winner, man. We can
Yeah, aloe vera is so good for you
we
too.
can make
Yeah.
that tea and
You,
spray
you
it on our
can
sweet
you can
potatoes.
drink it too, make juice and
plus, and I've seen this silica really gives your plants protection against sunburn.
Mm-hmm.
You know how you get sun scald on tomatoes and peppers and things like that?
Yep.
You never get them if you've got enough silica in them.
Cool.
So potassium silicate
Mm-hmm.
or horsetail or aloe vera, all of them protect against sunburn.
This article I just sent to John about a grower up in Maryland who's a vegan grower, but he sounds like a great grower. And he studied biodynamics too, and he uses a lot of biodynamics, but he's still a vegan. But he's still putting it off. He actually stopped a major infestation of sorghum aphid by using potassium sulfate.
Potassium
Potassium
silicate.
silicate.
Silicate, yeah, the
Potassium
silicate,
silicate,
that's the one that'll do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when this greenhouse is doing well, this sorghum by now, or Sudex, would be starting to touch the ceiling, you know? But
Yeah,
that
which-
crashing the fungi really like kind of took the fertility out of
Oh,
it.
that's right. Your trichoderma ate up all the rest of it,
So it's time to come back in and
which would have
regenerate.
given you a burst of incredible energy, and then it fell in the heap.
And that's about what happened. It did take out those diseases, but
Yeah, I bet.
I'm learning that the way to take out diseases is not to attack the diseases, but to work on the strength of the plant.
Yeah, well, how about that? You know, there is, this is an important point. There's a rule, this is true for quantum physics. If you look for the wave, you find the wave. If you look for the particle, you find the particle. But basically, whatever you look for is what you find.
that's in life too, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. And so, if you are going to like fight your problems, you will have your problems. So the rule of thumb is manage for what you want. Don't try to manage what you don't want.
That sounds like a really good rule of thumb.
That's a
That's
good
a very good piece of advice.
yeah, exactly.
Manage for what you want.
I was hoping to get the soil test for this. I'm going to have them send it to you. I'd like to talk to you about it when you get back
Sure.
to Georgia, you know?
Sure, you see how this fig is producing? That's
Yeah.
how way that other fig should be doing.
Yep.
And it's just got
Probably
way
not
too
as
much.
nitrogen in here, you know?
Yep. Oh, this is a beauty. What a beauty.
Yep.
Wow.
And that one right up there is ready if anybody wants to climb and get it.
This is a beautiful fig
Yeah,
here.
there's one on the other end too.
Yeah.
It's nice.
They are a rather invasive plant.
Yeah, not in this climate. They started to give us a hard time. We just open up the greenhouse and knock them back to the ground.
Well, yeah, you can do that with just a good winter cold
Yeah,
snap.
yep. I think there's an even riper one right there, isn't there?
There's a couple. I thought maybe.
Yeah, they need a little bit more.
I
ripeness, think.
might just give it a taste and see what I find.
They getting better taste-wise, John?
Oh yeah.
He wasn't happy with their taste at first, but now they're coming on. Yep. That's getting there.
Not the best I've ever tasted, but it's pretty good.
Pretty good for in a greenhouse.
Mmm. You're going to get some production out of this.
We did a tomato trial with 25 different varieties of heirlooms, and this was right on top. It's a determinate, so it quits a little earlier. But decent flavor. Not quite as big as I'd like them, but it's a cluster tomato.
That's good. That's a good one.
Yeah. I'd eat it. There's a lot of tomatoes I wouldn't bother to eat. I'd eat this one.
Just about all the tomatoes in the store I wouldn't
right, I
bother
don't
to
even
eat.
Look at those things. Yeah. And when wintertime comes, I'm done eating tomatoes for the year. You know,
No
they
kidding.
show up in my salad, I take them out, put them on the side of the plate.
Well, I like your management here. It's just with the spading machine, I didn't have to raise my beds anymore because I got the oxygen into it and all of that without having the bed raised. And then I didn't have to take it away from somewhere, and I could maintain the soil food web.
See here, because we made the beds, we didn't take anything away. We hauled everything in, you know?
Wow.
This was actually literally, there's a hill behind us, and this land used to have a hill all the way across it. By the time we got here, it was flattened, and so we were like many feet down. We were in deep subsoil.
So you just brought something else and put it on
We
top
brought
of the
pond muck,
subsoil.
pond muck, compost. We used about 2/3 of a yard of compost per bed with 5% charged charcoal. And when we got done, our cation exchange capacity was 21, and our production was massive. But then we weren't staying on keeping it watered, and I think that really screwed it up.
Yep.
We're letting it dry out, and we just can't do that. We just can't.
If you get your soil food web in good nick, you'll water a lot less.
Yeah, I don't think we needed to water a lot, but there were times, and I say we because I wasn't watering it either. At times this greenhouse was on automatic, and we just didn't get in here to water the beds that weren't happening. So that cost us. So this is how we've been doing worms, but the problem with this is that we're not going to get the leachate. It's going to drip out.
Yeah.
They thrive in these kind of boxes because they get a lot of oxygen.
We ought to be able to take those 250-gallon shuttles and do them in there.
I'm sure we can. Yeah. And we have an abundance of those.
Tell me what this carbonatite is.
From a fossilized seabed that got hit by an asteroid. So it's got.
Where was this?
Canada. Comes from Canada.
Carbonatite.
Yeah, it's very high in calcium.
Yeah, it's got plants growing in
But
it.
it's got a whole lot of other minerals in it, And it's a mine product, and I get some who say we can't really afford to mine anymore. It's probably true. I don't think we'll ever buy it again, but I think a one-time application might make a big difference. This guy Mark Cohen, who we're working with, has major testimonies to the things it's done. It's just incredible.
And this pond here with its riffraff there on the sides,
He made that.
what's the story on
This is,
that?
Explain it all.
This is a water catchment pond. So we're catching the water off the roof of the greenhouse and the biochar building.
Yeah.
And then we have, I don't know, maybe half-mile swales up on the land. So when we
Okay.
get a real event, this thing fills up pretty dramatically.
Right. But
There's-
you're using that water.
We're using it. Yeah, there's a
windmill here.
there's a windmill pumping it up to the top of the land to a pond, and then
Okay.
we're gravity feeding down. So we kind of got this little loop going here.
So this is catching it for the windmill to pump it into your actual
Upper pond.
the pond that feeds your irrigation system.
And then we have another pond across the road that we just need to put in because the land needed it. And that's got a solar pump that pumps into it too. So we have two different sources of water for that pond up top. And that pond is 500,000 gallons at least, right? Top one.
That's one of the things we've got to be considering because we're like I said, we're going to have more droughts and more floods.
Very important.
So we've got to catch those floods, and of course storing the water. That's a big question.
Well, this is set up to first. It doesn't begin to put anything into the pond until the aquifer has got all it can take. And once it won't absorb anymore, then it starts going into the pond. And that's exactly what we need to do.
Well, there's a fellow in Australia by the name of Peter Andrews. Don't know if you've heard of him or not.
I haven't.
But he's a world leader in the management of your hydrology. And his favorite method of storing the water is actually in the meadow. So by engineering the creek, he's charging the meadow up with underground water. But because it's underground, it doesn't evaporate the way it does with a surface pond. So it's much better storage. In other words, he's building water tables.
That's what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
And it would be good to find out more about Peter Andrews.
I think we'll research him.
Because his way of engineering creeks it's phenomenal. I'll show you a picture on my cell phone. It's beautiful, it's glorious. The creek that he engineered near Canberra, which is the national capital, it is in an area where during the dry spells, all the creeks are dry. Well, in engineering this creek, here he had a creek that was flowing year-round, I mean, with a surprising amount of water, and there was no water coming in at the surface up above it in the creek, and you went 20 feet downstream after it left his property, and it was back underground. Whatever there was of it was no longer visible. He was storing water in the meadow, and years when they got 6 and 8 inches of precipitation, it ran constantly.
Well, there's a letter being composed that's going to be signed by farmers saying we have to deal with climate change.
Well, we do.
Stop denying it, and so you'll see the letter eventually, but they sent it to me to add in, and I don't know if they added in, but I said we have to do this kind of land work for water. It's not just about, sequestering carbon. It is time for us to get serious, and they could easily, NRCS could provide the equipment and the skills to do this everywhere, and we need to be doing it,
And I have, the NRCS people that I've worked with have been good people, but man, they don't have, the level of technology or science that they have access to is they don't have the tools.
Yeah. No, I've actually been brought in to help train them on beneficial insects.
Well, somebody needs to train them because they sure don't get it in school.
Yeah, no, they don't. No, but a lot of them want to get it though, And I think
they're good people.
If we empower them,
Yeah. Like I say, here's these good people working in a government agency that don't have the tools to do what they need to do, or they don't have the understanding either. They don't know how it works. And there they are, our go-to source of how to deal with nature, and they don't know how nature works.
Well, there's a few in Extension and a few in NRCS, but it just is not very many. And then people like Ray Archuleta can't wait to get out of the USDA because of the grief he gets.
How can you blame him?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you can find some real jerk-off people in those government agencies, but my experience was in the agricultural sector. You rarely found those people.
No, they're good people, but you're exactly right about how unempowered they are.
They might as well be in manacles. They could be chained to the wall and they could get just as much done.
So we're going to go up to the upper pasture? Or we're gonna stay there?
I think we're good.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this is it. Except for, did you want to show us something on slides, or is that?
I'd love to.
Okay.
We have to get back to my computer in some place that we can set up.
We can do it right over in North River, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's head to North River. Great. You got enough seed there? And you want me to find you a bag for some of this? Do you want to try some of the Carbonate type?
Not really.
Okay.
I'm curious about it though.
Well, I'll get the guy.
There's something goes on in Canada that I haven't seen in the rest of North America, and it's what happens in winter, and they get the best winters.
Yes, they sure do. Yep.
We're of this belief, which is totally unsupported, that things shut down in the winter and nothing's happening.
Fungi don't shut down.
Well, in the winter is when it comes alive in the soil.
Yep.
It's like, oh, you didn't know that winter is when the soil restores itself? It becomes alive and everything becomes integrated again, and it's ready to go in the spring. Well, we can see it happen.
Well, actually,
why don't we know that
where you have heavy snow cover, because then you got a moderated temperature,
Yeah, the heavy snow cover is definitely a plus.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like we don't know these things. It's crazy.
I've been learning them. I've been fascinated by what I've been learning. Yeah.
Well, when you look at things in nature that are unexplained, like how do you explain that around the roots of these maple trees, there's no sugar in the soil, and the rest of that, not a lot anyway, in the autumn. Over the winter, this plant is storing up for this surge in the spring that we cook off as maple syrup, and it is a major sugar producing thing.
And it's
It's photosynthesizing under the snow all winter. What's happening? You know, there's some sugar making process going on there. And we're pretending that photosynthesis is the only sugar making process? Well, there's something else goes on too.
Right. Yeah,
And you'd
there's a
have to
world of
wonder,
life, and they're all working together.
sugar beets. Where do they grow sugar beets? Sweden.
Right. Yep.
You know, I mean,
Minnesota. Right. Yeah. Wisconsin.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, Canada protects their sugar beet industry. So if you're trucking cane sugar to Canada, that's fine, but you truck beet sugar in there and they stop you at the border and they spin your sugar up in their centrifuge and they know immediately whether you have beet or cane sugar because beet sugar has more carbon-13. Now what's going on there? Why does beet sugar have more carbon-13? I mean, we're not explaining the things that I mean, we can know it to the extent that we can discriminate between cane sugar and beet sugar at the Canadian border. But why don't we know what the process is involved in it becoming that way?
We know so little about processes in general. You know? I mean,
Yeah, processes are complicated.
and when people try to come to conclusions, because they can't, because it's so complex, if they try to just do what Darwin did, figuring out evolution, they get called non-scientific. They get said.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you say, well, let's do trials. And say, we can never do a trial. It's way too complex. And I'm like, well, then just get out of our way. You know.
Believe me, I run into this. People say, well, where's your science? And I say, well, what kind of science, you know?
Right. About 5 years ago,
is this going to be Newtonian science or is it going to be Goethean science? Well, I've lost them already. They never heard of Goethe.
Right. It's just
well,
because they get farmers who are starting to think this way, they scare them because they say, well, that's not scientific. It's all just a bunch of hokum. It's like, you guys refuse to look at complexity. You don't accept the fact that everything is connected. And you want to tell me that your science is the way I'm going to understand the world. No, I love your science. It teaches me all kinds of pieces.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
The pieces alone are not getting me anywhere. You know?
That's right.
You know, so we just keep saying it. And maybe someday some are starting to get it. You know,
we'll be alive when they're, pushing up daisies. So just what can you say?
Yeah, this is a system that will continue to work.
You have to have patience. That's
it's in the
sure.
context of the real world. You know, that's what matters. Okay, let's go to North River and look at some slides. Okay.
Okay.